Okay, stanza 2. So what we have now is a new narrator, or the friend who the narrator in stanza 1 was talking to. So the second guy walking through the institutions. And what he's doing is he's answering the questions posed by narrator number 1. And so what we learn through this stanza is that these men have been driven to madness by the memories of those that they have killed or witnessed killed. So these are men whose minds the dead have ravished. Memory fingers in their hair of murders, multitudinous murders they once witnessed. And so straight away, we notice that that sound, men whose minds the dead have ravished, memory fingers their hair of murders, multitudinous murders. And so, like the L, it slows things down. But also it creates kind of like this moaning sound that might mimic the sound that the men are making in the institutions to show that they're in pain, or that they're sleeping and they are having sort of bad dreams and they're moaning in distress. So that's the alliteration. In the first line, one of the first things I noticed is this capital letter here, which seems a little bit out of place. So using the punctuation, we've got the personification of the dead. We also have the personification of memory. So memory fingers in their hair. It's like plays with their hair and kind of teases them. And so what we learn about both the dead and the memories is that they are fully capable of inflicting real harm. By personifying them, we can understand that they can have a physical effect on these boys. We've also got this keyword ravish. So to ravish, it's often used to ravish someone. So it kind of means to, historically, or its first meaning is about eating something, to eat them alive, but through semantic change and how it's been used over time, can also mean to it has some sexual connotations, but it comes down back to it's really animalistic, and it has sort of this brutal connotation and feral, and so it's that idea of they have been eaten alive in a brutal, animalistic, feral way. The last thing that's really of note in this here is these 3 lines is murders, multitudinous murders. So we've got the repetition of the word murders and the word multitudinous in between. So these 3 words work in combination to really just as a pile on. They have witnessed murder upon multiple murders. And so it just reinforces the sheer mass of the dead, which is then, you almost get this image of so that idea of mass murder, a pile of bodies. And this image of the pile of bodies is seen in the next couple of lines. So waiting sloughs or sloughs of flesh, these helpless wonder, treading blood from lungs that had loved laughter, always they must see these things and hear them. And so we see that pile of the dead, or in this case, waist high, and they're trying to wade through the bodies, the sloughs of flesh. They are dead, they're decomposing to the point where they've caused, they're almost like mud. And so that's that image there. In this line, we see that the soldiers are trying to escape. They're wading through it. They're trying to tread. They're trying to survive. But it's these memories that are slowly killing them. Where it says here, they must always, so this implies that this is both day and night. It might be as hallucinations during the day. It could just be them replaying it in their own memory, or it could be in their sleep during nightmares. Or it could just be that they don't sleep and they see it all the time. So they must always see these things. We also have, again, that L sound, that slowing down of the poem. So it just, not only is their pain extended, but so is ours, as we have to picture, we're positioned, we're forced to picture this like pile of decomposed bodies as we try to push through it, and it's really graphic. And what Owen might be trying to do is to make us as a reader feel just as in pain or suffer the same sort of fate as them, as long as he can make us. And so by slowing us down with that L sound, he attempts that. It also mirrors that feeling of being trapped and stuck, like the men in the memories. And the last sort of thing that I'd like to bring up is some key pieces of diction in this line. So there are two words like helpless and must, which just shows us that these boys are powerless to do anything about their situation. So they're helpless, and they must see these things. There's no other option for them, and there's no escape. In the final three lines, we still have that image of the sort of that pile of bodies. And this is probably the most graphic stanza, and we see this in particular in that very first line. So batter of guns and shatter of flying muscles. So in this section of the stanza, the sheer amount of trauma and death has been piled on these men so heavily that they can no way be saved or extricated. So to extricate means to take out. So for example, if there was a collapsed building and you were trying to find people to pull out, that would be called extricating. And so there's no way that these men could be extricated, because the carnage, so the death and the destruction and the human waste is rucked too thick. It's piled too thick and too heavy for these men to be pulled out from it. That might have physically happened, and on the battlefield, but in this case, it's like a metaphor for the memories. Other interesting aspects of this section of the stanza is just that keyword muscles, that diction of muscles. It's very to the point, but it's also extremely graphic by choosing that anatomical description, and it shows us that these bodies have been fully destroyed and are possibly, they're flying bits everywhere. Really, really graphic. The shatter of flying muscles. Sound is really, really important in this section. So straight away we've got the rhyme of batter and shatter, but what is really interesting is this t sound, the consonants of the t, the repeated tt, and it creates a cacophony. So if you think of like a really nice piece of music where everything fits together and it's got a flow and it's got a melody, you would describe that sound as euphonious, as being pleasing to the ear. If something is cacophonous or is a cacophony, it's a really awful bashing, crashing sounds that are out of place and are painful to the ear. And so we've got this cacophony, this chaotic sound, the harsh sounds that probably mimic the sounds of battlefield and the carnage and destruction. And so you've got that batter and shatter, these harsh sounds, and then you've got it again with the consonants of the k sound, so carnage, incomparable, rucked too thick for these men's extrication. So that k, k, k sound is adding to the cacophony, the chaos, which is also reinforced by the imagery of the batter of guns and shatter of flying muscles. So that's that stanza there. So we've got the horrors of warfare and the imagery of warfare shoved in our faces, and the sound devices help to make us feel very much like the victims or the mental cases in the poem. Number one, it's really graphic and we are horrified by the images. Number two, the sounds mimic the sounds of battlefield with the cacophony. And number three is that slowing down, that feeling of no escape. And the way that sound is used in this stanza helps us to feel that same eternal suffering feeling as the poet or as the mental cases do, as the soldiers in the institution do.